I'm going to go ahead and call the June 22nd, 2023 Board of Health, Monroe County Board of Health meeting to order. The time is whatever, 5:34. All right. Let's see, we have first order of business would be, did everybody have a chance to read the minutes from, we approved the minutes from April 27th, but of course, our last meeting was not a legitimate meeting, so we have to redo all those things because we didn't have two positions on the board last time, licensed positions. That was a big, Carol did not have her, Carol Tolukian didn't have her an active license, so we needed that. Last time we didn't, Bob Wren had already submitted his resignation. Carol didn't have a license.
So I said,
Yeah, you were right. So thanks for being here again. And licensed. So we approved these April 27th minutes once, so I'm assuming, and there haven't been any changes.
I move that we approve them officially.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the April 27th meeting of the Monroe County Board of Health. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. All right. I guess we didn't actually have a meeting last time, so we don't really have, do we have official minutes from there? We do. I'm not sure do we need to approve the minutes of a meeting that wasn't,
A meeting, an official meeting?
yeah, an official meeting?
I don't think we did.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so either, but thank you for including them so we can remember what we did.
Oh, wait, I think, didn't we say something about like, since you're now-
Ratifying.
Yeah, you would ratify the decisions that y'all made
Never
in the
made
last.
us.
Yes, yeah, that's what we're doing. One of the things we're doing tonight, yeah. So, given that, actually, and we have a guest appearance tonight. So, how do you pronounce your first name?
Cheyenne.
Cheyenne.
Yep.
Okay, good.
It's easy. It doesn't look easy on paper.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It is easy and that's kind of nice. It's a little twist on a, yeah. Well, Cheyenne, actually, you're gonna have you go ahead and do your presentation.
Okay, Jamie, would you like to pull up? It would be the June 1st, 2023, if you can. So the most recent ones.
Share my screen, sorry. I'm both moderating and doing my own thing, so. if
I apologize.
Take me a second, sorry.
Jamie has taken on some IT duties as well.
But basically, I'm going to give the quick and dirty version, and if there's any further questions, I'm more than happy to answer them as best as I can.
It can be dirty because it's a septic system.
I mean, it always is.
Kind of a play on words, right?
So that's this one. So we can go to the next slide. Actually, you can go to like the third one, I think. So two bills got passed. We already know about HB 1245. That one that passed last or 2 years ago now. And then two more passed this year. It was SEA 414 and 1402, which I'll talk about a little bit later. 414, luckily, is probably not going to affect us too terribly much here in Monroe County. This first slide is about permanent discharge systems. So basically having a unit that treats sewage effluent and then discharges clean water just directly into the environment instead of into like a septic field that percolates through the soil, which is, kind of conventional way. These permanent discharge systems are like the bulk of 414. However, they do, the advanced treatment requires what would be the exact wording for it? We can go to the next slide, yeah. So this is just kind of like the language of options to use a permanent discharge system for repair or replacement when there's no other option to put in a septic field. That's basically that one. And then the next one, is the big thing of why I'm saying it's probably not going to affect us anytime soon, is this section applies only in a county with on-site waste management district established under IC 36-11. We currently do not have that. Actually, no county in the state has that, except I believe for Allen County. So we do have the opportunity to adopt this, but if anyone starts requesting to be able to put in discharge systems where we can't permit those right now, unless we create this on-site waste management district, which that's kind of up to you guys, but we don't really have that established in any way, shape or form right now. So that kind of doesn't apply to us right now, or, you know, depending on if anyone's interested in, you know, for a while. And then you can go to the next slide. This is just kind of more like how these permanent discharge systems are going to be used. Again, it doesn't really apply to us right now because we don't have that. So let's see. It would be enforced under items NIFTY's general permit. And I think we can just kind of skip ahead unless you have any questions regarding that. Discharging systems, we can just skip to the.
Has anyone asked for this in your county that you know of?
We've had a couple of people ask for advanced treatment units, and I've heard one or two installers express interest in it. There's also, I've gotten some letters and some contact from a company called Monroe. But they've just kind of been pushing their feelers out to see it, like what kind of program we have here right now. So I've heard some like interest from builders and you know, private companies that create these, but not really from any citizens yet. Now granted, I'm not terribly surprised. I don't think a lot of the average citizen knows very much about, you know, this kind of stuff. So I'm not surprised by that.
And what would it take for the county to establish that type of waste district? Is there going to be, should we get to that point, would it be a tremendous amount of extra oversight and
It would, because these kind of systems require operating permits. So we would have to have a group kind of either partially, either that is completely their job or that's a good portion of their job. And we'd have to create a operating permit program. So that way we could continuously monitor these kinds of systems, or create contracts with private companies or installers to do that monitoring for us and then report back. So the next slide, I believe, so this is also in regards to holding tanks. We don't use holding tanks very regularly, so this is also not going to apply to us too terribly much. It just lays out a little bit more information. It happens every once in a while, but I believe, let's see, through nope, that's 1402. I apologize. The next one, the next slide. So, you know, holding tanks can be operated a little bit higher. Thank you. But this just kind of goes over the application and permitting process for holding tanks. And the tank owner has obtained a permit from the local health department. It's really kind of a last ditch effort. I don't think there's been one approved permit for a holding tank installed here in the county since I've been here since 2019. There's some old ones from, you know, like prior to 1965 that we keep an eye on. But for as far as like putting in new holding tanks, that's not really a thing very much. But this kind of just applies that, you know, the tank owner has to obtain a permit from the local health department. And this is also in the similar vein of the discharge systems where they kind of have to get an operating permit. We have to continuously monitor that they're, you know, getting everything pumped on a regular basis. And we just kind of haven't, we don't have a program for that really. So this doesn't super apply to us either.
Is this more like out where you'd have campgrounds and things like that?
Yeah, yeah, holding tanks are definitely more common. That's kind of what all of our, I'd say most of our campgrounds run off of is very old holding tanks that just kind of still exist. There's a couple of old businesses in like the smaller towns that still have holding tanks. There's a sprinkling of houses on, like near Lake Monroe or on Lake Lemon or something where it's, there's just no, the slope is too steep and they have a holding tank that when the house was built and, prior to 1965. And then the biggest things,
So if we don't have a process, I assume that means we're still checking that those tanks that do exist are monitored on a regular basis and that they're being emptied on a regular basis. And so there is some amount of oversight of the tanks that do exist.
yes, so the ones that we know about, and I will not deny that there are some historical ones that we probably don't. I do run across holding tanks every once in a while where, I get a complaint or something along those lines. And I go out and I'm like, there's not a record of septic system here. And they're like, oh, it's because we have a holding tank. And I'm like, how often do you pump your holding tank? Not often enough. Okay, let's get this all settled. So that is something that happens every once in a while, but the ones that we do know about, we do regularly check up on as best we can.
If you had a holding tank that wasn't being, well, that was overflowing, obviously. And it's been there since the 60s, let's say. And now there are different systems and things that might fit. Do you suggest that can we mandate that they get rid of that holding tank and put some other of a more modern type system in there that maybe didn't exist at that time?
To be perfectly honest, I have not run into a historical holding tank where a system can be installed yet.
Okay.
So I would absolutely give that education. I've just never personally run into the situation. It's always, they're on a slope that is too steep. It's all gravel, it's all, everything's built on something along those
So
lines.
those discharge units that we were looking at prior to this, that wouldn't apply in those situations, where they would actually clean it before the effluent went away somewhere.
So can you clarify your question a little bit?
Yeah, we just looked at a system that you said doesn't really apply here, that we don't have a way of dealing with it. It only applies in Allen County. Is that a situation where historic tank might be replaced?
That is a
by
good example.
cleaner
Yeah.
System.
That would definitely be an option, I think, and probably the first place that if we did want to move forward with creating that wastewater management program, that it would probably be applied to is to, take out the holding tanks and use this system. Would probably also make it a little bit more clear with a little bit more paperwork than historically has been provided beforehand. So yeah. But we just don't have that wastewater management program yet specifically for those. And then the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, the next one after this one. Oh, I was further back than I thought. I'm looking for 1402. There we go. So this is in reference to what was originally part of HB 1245. Where we cannot have rules stricter than the state. All of our county ordinances specifically in regards to wastewater cannot be stricter than the state. And this goes into effect July 1st. And anything that is stricter than the state becomes unenforceable and void. And then you can go to the next page. Oh, and sorry, get that one. That was actually not accurate. So this is some information about the technical review panel. Okay, so there's a new situation where because our code is because this legislature went through and our code cannot be stricter than the state in effect July 1st, there is a subsection in 1402 that says that we can apply for us code stricter than the state. And if we get approved by the technical review panel, then we can put those into effect. However, this is not allowed cannot approve an ordinance that requires something specifically prohibited by a statute. And the example is requirements for a set aside. So there's no more set asides, but In the current version, there's not any specific prohibitions on lot size requirements. So we could theoretically require a certain lot size, but we can't require a set aside anymore. So that's what this is in regards to.
We do have the requirements for lot size, don't we?
Yes,
An
we
acre.
currently do. The state does not, so that is going to lose its effect. We can apply for, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but we can apply to be more strict than the state, October 1st. So there's going to be a bit of a break where July 1st, all of our stricter code goes away. October 1st, we can apply for our stricter code. But also I will perfectly admit, every single county has code stricter than the state. We're all gearing up for October 1st. It's probably going to be a while before the technical review panel gets to, everyone. And I don't,
Because I know we've denied at Lake Lemon
Yeah.
some things because they were less than an acre.
Yep.
So,
yeah, that's a situation that's come up before. So we can apply for that to be part of our code again. We just can't apply for it until October 1st. And I truly do not have a timeline for when that would be approved either with, 90 plus counties all applying for something at the same time for.
So during this interval, developers can come up with anything they like
To a certain extent, kind of,
Yeah.
yes.
within the state
Yeah.
mandate, right?
Yep, and we'd be required to approve it. So I have spoken to several people in the state because I did have questions in regards to that of, what would happen in a situation where they applied for a permit during this break time and it was issued because it was required to be, but then we applied for a stricter code and then that permit would no longer be, would be against our code. And I've been told by the state, but not confirmed by legal on, we would have to honor that permit to be installed. So.
So it almost sounds as if during that period, if you had, unfortunately, we don't have that particular waste district, but it would be a great place for imposing the cleansing through the effluent, since, you can't restrict size, at least we would be doing something that would clean the discharge and would be, I know we don't have the regulations, but would at least take care of that gap area.
Yes, theoretically, but there's actually further portions of the code that would make what you just said kind of null, unfortunately. So, and that's actually the next page. So the plan approval, plans approved by a professional engineer, installer, or inspector, and system designer, so it has to have 3 people. If the plan does not comply with the rule of the local health, basically what this is portioned is if they have to get a permit either through the local health department or at the expense of the homeowner is how it's worded. If they get a plan approved by a professional engineer, installer / inspector, and system designer, then we are required to issue them a permit with even against, our considerations. So, theoretically, if they approved a septic system that was against code, that's kind of like a gray area that we just haven't encountered yet. So we don't have a lot of like, what are we going to do in that situation? The hope is of course, 3 professionals aren't going to approve something that's directly in violation of state code. But
Unless they're paid enough.
I was gonna say, unless they wallow in their own shit.
but
I mentioned.
the world is full of
Many
possibilities.
months
If
ago.
that happens, we don't have a lot of direction on how to, manage that situation yet. And that is something that's come up a couple of times with the state, and we just haven't quite hammered out, what to do in that situation, but it has been brought up. But that is in regards to kind of what you just said.
But one thing that bothers me is the state really doesn't have any slope requirements, does it?
So the state does.
For in-ground,
And for in-ground, anything is 15% or more. We already have that. County currently has a slope requirement of 12% or less.
Yeah,
In environmental constraint area 1 for the Lake Monroe watershed, that is going to go away. So it's going to be 15% across the board for subsurface systems. After that, in regards to it, there are elevated septic systems have a 6% slope requirement, and that's based on the elevated sand mound systems that's in the state code, and also on the manufacturer manual, which is going to act as like not quite a code, but at least, you know, if the manufacturer isn't going to say that something's going to work on over a certain percent slope, then, you know, you're kind of installing something at your own risk at that point. The manufacturer is not going to own up to it. So, and then the next slide, I think we're almost at the end to the short version. This is in regards to complaint cases. So these last couple of slides are in regards to complaint cases. Beforehand, we were kind of doing a knock and talk style where somebody would call us and request our services, you know, saying, hey, I think there might be sewage. We would usually go up, knock on the door, inform the property owner that, hey, we've got a call about a complaint. We're just going to go take some samples or what have you, or leave a card on the door. This requires a 7-day notice, and it's just a notice. It's not necessarily a response. So that's not too much. That's not too much of a change, and it's not too different from other counties. So I'm not overly concerned about that personally. Not that my opinion super matters. But the other thing is that 7-day notice. The bit of confusion that comes around this is it's a 7-day notice requirement unless there is a visible public health hazard. And I have not gotten a definition from anyone about what a public health hazard is. Now, granted, I can make some general assumptions that there's water pouring out into the street or something along those lines, but I don't have a specific, you know, definition of that. So it's kind of up to inspectors' discretion right now. But so far, you know, it's probably going to, if there's something so concerning that we need to forego this, I imagine it would be fairly serious. Let's see, and does the only other thing, I guess, that I would want to go over, it's not in this version, but it is further in regards to kind of that complaint case notices. So give me just a moment so that way I can quote things properly. Here it is. Okay. So. One page. There we go. It's not the page I was looking for. So. Here it is. I apologize. If a system is found to be in failure, we would of course issue a health officer order. But there is a new section in 1402 specifically where in section 13, where we would stay the order if the owner or occupant of the residence served by the residential on-site sewage system within 14 days after the date of the order enters into a contract with a septic installer or inspector, an on-site sewage system technician, or an Indiana professional engineer. Specifically, the only thing is nobody knows what an on-site sewage system technician is. That's not a term that we've ever run into, so we're not sure how that's supposed to be defined.
not a licensed position or
No, that
qualified person somehow?
So honestly, other than individual counties certifying installers and or inspectors and the Indiana On-Site Wastewater Professionals Association, the only thing that would be considered registered on this list would be the Indiana Professional Engineer. And there's been a little bit of debate on whether or not our installer certification program would actually stay under this, because it's not mentioned in the state code for that reason that originally they wanted counties to kind of create their own registration process. There's a couple of other things in regards to registration from 1402 with installers that kind of mesh in interesting ways. So I'm not 100% sure. I need to double check with legal on whether or not our installer certification program is going away. I don't think in its entirety, because we have our fee code that allows us to take fees, but I don't know if we can require our regular requirements. Not that they're super arduous in any way, I don't think.
So would that indicate the technician piece? Would that indicate that someone working for one of these installers would be considered a technician, a septic technician?
Possibly, I don't know, because it's not defined anywhere. I've not seen it. I've not seen it defined, and I've personally not seen it used. And Alice Quinn with the state has also, I don't know if they figured it out since the last time we talked yet, but the last time I spoke to her in regards to it, nobody had a specific definition in regards to what a sewage technician was supposed to be.
Doesn't the Legislative Services Organization review these things so that there is some meaning to the terminology that they use?
To be perfectly honest, legislature is not my area.
Yeah.
So I do not have an answer to that. I have rumors and gossip in regards to that, but I do not have, I don't actually understand perfectly how the legislature works.
These are the guys who
in regards
draft
to
the
this.
bills. They're the
So-
ones who, we're looking at their work product.
So, further in regards to that, so we have to give 7 days notice for a complaint case. If we find something, and issue a health officer order, it's then stayed within if they enter into a contract within 14 days. And then that order is stayed, until the earlier of the following, the date on which the installer or inspector, technician, or engineer performs the inspection and presents the results of the inspection in writing to both us and the owner, within 45 days. And if they find that it is operating as it, let's see, it, and that the residential on-site sewage system is not in residential on-site sewage system failure, the local health department shall withdraw the order issued, conduct an investigation. And then there's also, I can't find it right now, so I won't quote that section, but basically, yeah, so there's a 7-day requirement for notice. If we get notice that they've entered into a contract, that's a stayed order within our 14 days, and then another 45 days of waiting for this, information to reach us. So
And
that's,
those 45 business days?
it just says 45 days, so I guess you could argue it's not business days, but that would be
So it's
something to
looking
keep in.
like 2 months after you've left notice. So nothing really needs to have happened.
Yep. So, and then. Yeah, and then if we get the notice that it is not in failure, then we kind of have to start all over again with our investigation. So. That's a thing that happens. Then. Back to, back to the last couple of things. I believe that was kind of the end of it.
Do you want me to share my screen again?
The last slide, that was actually the one I was looking to quote, so. So, yeah, the very last slide. So if a system is found to not have a septic tank and a soil absorption, that the system is not functioning correctly. So that was like, you can't have a holding tank that's overflowing and, be considered functional. That doesn't count as functioning septic system. There was some current concerns in regards to that. So she just wanted to clarify in that regards, but specifically in the quoted section, neither an officer or employee of the local health department on which a residential sewage system is located for the purpose of inspecting the system, if not more than 180 days before the date of the inspection, the owner or occupant of the residence served gets a septic installer or inspector registered with the county. An on-site sewage septic system technician or a professional engineer. Again, technician isn't to state in a writing transmitted to the local health department that the residential on-site sewage system is functioning properly. So basically, if somebody says this, system is functioning how it's supposed to, we are no longer allowed to enter that property for 180 days. Whoa.
It also refers to a registered person with the county,
Yes.
which suggests that the county registers these individuals and presumably has some kind of training or qualification requirements.
That is true. And in regards to that, there is another section 14 of 1402 that states, on-site sewage system service means, installing, an individual who is registered with at least one county in Indiana to provide on-site sewage system, service in this county. So, And-
In that county or just any old county in Indiana?
It sounds like,
yes, to a certain extent.
so. any old
So
county-
if you're certified in one county, you can theoretically be certified in all counties. I believe it's in specific regards to being certified with the Indiana Onsite Wastewater Professionals Association and in good standing with them. And has not had the registration revoked in any other county. That one is kind of fun because while I do communicate with other counties fairly regularly, we don't keep a list of installers that that have had issues in other counties beforehand. So that's going to be a new kind of communication that we're probably going to need to establish, just to be clear on all of that.
Just as bad as this sounds, I was fortunate enough to sit in with Mark, from the state?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who, I was really impressed by his knowledge, and it was really, I just spent an hour here. I don't know how long you were here, maybe 3 hours or something
Yeah,
that
he
day.
usually comes for 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
to do training.
Yeah, and I was just here for the first hour, but I learned a lot. And he said, he goes, I know this, that a lot of this sounds terrible, but and given the fact that there are, some loopholes here, which in my opinion shouldn't be there, like probably the way what you're thinking. But he said, as a matter of practice, the professional organization that certifies these people or.
Oh, yes,
which
I'm actually also a member of IOPA too.
Yeah, but IOPA
so-
is really, they don't just certify that anybody,
They have a full training. In fact, I'm a member of IOPA, but I'm actually not certified by IOPA yet
whatever.
because because their training requires multiple days traveling to, different parts of the state to look at soils, to, take tests, to do training, all that. And I just personally have not had the time. It's one of my goals since started working here is to become certified with them. But it's just, it is a very formal process that also requires continuing education credits. So it's not, they're not just off in the middle of nowhere, writing down everyone's names, like you can do everything. It's not that.
So, does Mark have any idea what an on-site sewage system technician is?
I think we asked him, I think that was actually asked, wasn't it?
Last time I spoke to him, I think the last time he was here was actually when you were here.
Yeah.
But the last time I heard, like I said, I didn't have a specific definition on that yet.
Yeah.
So I can make some guesses and some assumptions, but I don't have really too much direction on what that term means.
I just wondered, if he's the IOPA person, does this person have to be certified? Maybe it's something we need to ask our local legislators to look into and make sure, either they eliminate that because it's superfluous and.
Yeah, the only problem is asking our local legislatures.
I know, it's
For them, it's like they're spitting in the wind, because,
They're from Bloomington.
they're in the wrong party, yeah.
Well, maybe we need to get the head of the other party to come down and tell us, what does this mean?
Yeah.
You guys passed this, what is it?
So I don't have it quoted here, but I can find out who wrote this legislation. I just don't have it written down anywhere and I apologize for that, but that is, pretty straightforward to find is the people who wrote this bill and approved it and all that kind of
Well,
fun
that'd be
stuff.
great, because then we can ask them specifically.
Wouldn't hold your breath for a lot of changes, but.
Every day and ask them. Please.
So, that, was kind of like like I said, the quick and dirty version. But that covers pretty much, I think, everything that's going to directly apply to us kind of immediately. There's a few kind of smaller things, but, for the most part, I think that covers like the biggest things that are gonna change.
Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah,
Yep. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I know not a lot of people like to think about wastewater, but
well, that's pretty important. Yeah, not pretty important, it's really important, as a matter of fact, especially when we think our drinking water could be threatened, so.
yes. Yep, water is very important, whether it's going in or coming out.
There you go. Any other questions for Cheyenne? No? Thanks a bunch.
No problem. I didn't bring any business cards, but it's pretty easy to find me, or if you ever have any questions, I'm more than happy to email, call, whatever I can do to help to explain stuff. I feel like education is a big portion, bigger than I realized.
Let's call Lori, she had anything else to do.
So, but yeah, I'm more than happy to help in any way I can, so.
I can grab some business cards after the meeting.
Oh, I can go grab them now,
No,
honestly, and I can just drop.
I can
Okay,
grab it.
okay, I appreciate it, so.
Thank you, though,
But
Shai.
yeah, thank you for your time. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lots of good information. All right, Lori, you want to launch here into with some general updates?
Sure. Zara did join. Do we want to amend this agenda and have her give a public health clinic update?
Oh, yeah, sure. Does anybody have any issues, further discussion about changing the agenda?
Great idea.
I didn't think you did, so
Hello, can we hear me okay?
we can.
Yay, last time we had some technical difficulty, so go Jamie. So yes, I'm Zara, the Monroe County Public Health Clinic Manager. We have some exciting updates for you guys, so jumping in. We have officially finished onboarding our newest RN. Her name is Tamra, or as she likes to be known as, Tammy Fitter. So this week was her first official week where she had her own patient schedule, and I'm happy to say that she has been doing a wonderful job, and we are so happy and lucky to have her. She also wrapped up her onboarding for TB disease case management and LTBI reporting. And while she's still learning, again, she's doing a wonderful job, and she is picking things up rather quickly. So we're happy to have Miss Tammy. You may have, Jamie, I don't know if we can at least show Lindsay's video, but there is another black screen, and it's my lovely colleague, Lindsay Shipley. She is joining us on this meeting. It's her first time joining for a Board of Health meeting, so I think we're getting her on. But in other news, it is with mixed emotions, both a heavy and hopeful heart, that I share that I have accepted a new position that will require me to resign from my current role as manager of the Monroe County Public Health Clinic. My official last day with the clinic will be Thursday, July 13th. Lori's aware, everybody's aware. So as I mentioned, Miss Lindsay has joined, and Lindsay joined the public health clinic about a year ago. She has really grown into her position and the world of public health in general, and she has agreed to step into a supervisor role for the clinic upon my departure. So I just wanted her to be able to join and say hello and meet the lovely, lovely Board of Health. I'm not sure if she gave a wave.
Oh,
Can you hear me? I think I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can.
Maybe?
We can barely
Hi.
see you.
Okay, let's
You're good,
see.
yeah.
I don't know what to do about that. Is that a little
Just
bit
tilt
better?
your camera, just tilt your, yeah, something like that.
It's like,
It's better.
it's weird. So
It's better.
Hi, guys.
We can
So
do-
nice
we
to
can't
see
see
you
the
all.
bottom half of your face, but
I
There
don't
we go.
know.
there we
A
go.
little better.
There,
There we go.
that's good.
Good to see you guys. Yeah, happy to step into this position and just looking forward to working together with you guys.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Lindsay.
sure.
So yes, thank you. I do want to apologize. We normally like to provide our quarterly data to you guys. Unfortunately, we just weren't quite ready with the data in order to provide, but once we get that gathered, I will share that with Jamie. And Jamie has kindly said that she would share that with everyone that wants to have a copy of that. So jumping right in, with immunizations, our vaccine supply is in good standing. The schedule, our normal clinic schedule is busy, but we are still able to accommodate same week appointments or early appointments the following week. We are continuing to see people come in for bivalent boosters, but it has definitely slowed down. And we are working with our vaccine management partner to start planning for the fall and get flu vaccines ordered. And I believe the conversation for COVID is still ongoing and what that will look like in the fall, but I know Miss Lindsay has that under control. We did share one Start Smart clinic date with IDOH. For those that are not familiar, this is an initiative put on by IDOH where they are creating a large map of back to school immunization clinics in the state. So they'll be sending letters and emails to parents, letting them know where all these clinics are located and what might be the most convenient or closest to them in order to kind of, help encourage those total vaccine numbers in the state to go to where we want to see them. So that clinic, the one that we are participating in, is scheduled for the second Saturday in August, which is August 12th. And that's from 8 to 11. Appointments are encouraged, but if we are able to accommodate walk-ins, we'll happily do so. And that Start Smart initiative, the state is simply supporting our clinic by advertising and sending out letters on our behalf, as well as including us on that digital map. They will not be supporting us with the mobile unit. Just wanted to clarify that. We did have our VFC site visit. This is an annual visit and things went really well. We did have some feedback, but nothing major, just some slight adjustments to our process. In the world of communicable disease, we currently have 48 open cases, 39 of those being hepatitis and 33 of those being hepatitis C, but no outbreaks or trends or especially concerning infections to note. In the world of lead, we currently have 12 cases that we are monitoring, with only 4 of those requiring full case management. In TB and LTBI, we have less than 5 cases in active treatment, and we had no new reports this week, and that has been the trend for the last few weeks. For our outreach program, we have been pretty busy out in the community quite a bit this last quarter, doing well screenings. We have screened 112 individuals for hypertension, 65 individuals for cholesterol, 101 for diabetes, and we have also given 63 COVID boosters throughout the last quarter at these events. We do have a few more wellness outreaches scheduled before we roll into back to school and flu season. So that is all the updates I have. I do want to take a second to say thank you to the board again and to the health department as a whole. I have truly enjoyed my time with the public health clinic and I am beyond grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Zara. Yeah, appreciate all your work. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Anybody have any questions for Zara? No?
Do you track venereal diseases as well?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Are you tracking venereal diseases as well?
I'm actually not sure about that. I don't know if Lindsay knows. I don't, off the top of my head, I'm not completely sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm happy to inquire about that with our communicable disease
Yeah,
nurse.
I'd be really curious to know about syphilis and gonorrhea and many other venereal diseases we have in the community.
Yeah, I want to say that's mostly done at the health department. Lori, am I wrong on that?
Our DIS division, and the state has recently made some updates to the syphilis tracking. So they've actually started a webpage on the Indiana Department of Health that's going to have data that's showing for each county, and you can filter the information, and it's already going to be pre-suppressed data. So of course, you know, the more confidential, less than 5 cases will be suppressed, but the other data will be available so that we can compare Monroe County to our surrounding counties. But our DIS tracks that
Okay,
information.
thank you.
And we used to get that information periodically. Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate all the information.
Welcome, Lindsay.
All right. So do we have any other, well, we have your updates.
Yes, I just have a few. So the state, the Indiana Department of Health website, they're in the process of making a Health First webpage. This is tracking the counties that have opted into the state's initiative created by Senate Enrolled Act 4. So far, 16 counties in the state of Indiana have opted in. Again, the commission's report released in July of 2022 focuses on 6 areas of governance, infrastructure and services, funding, workforce, data and information integration, emergency preparedness, and childhood and adolescent health. The Indiana Department of Health is recommending that counties work with their auditor to determine the county match for those who are going to be still opting in. This will be an average of county funding for 2021, 22, and 23. Recently did receive budget templates and a range of what the state funding would be, but no exact dollar amount at this time. So more information to come on those figures later.
Are we
COVID.
one of those 16?
Not from my understanding.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
COVID-19 and FDA Advisory Committee recently recommended the COVID boosters be updated to a monovalent XBB composition. This is going to help protect against the XBB variant that is highly circulating at this time. This update means the original COVID strain would not be included in the new boosters. It's anticipated that these boosters would become widely available this fall. Pfizer, Novavax, and Moderna have been in discussion of combo flu and flu COVID shots with launch trials. The department is monitoring this information for updates on an ongoing basis. As Zara mentioned, the public health clinic has vaccines available for all ages. They are busy doing school clinics, getting the kiddos up to date with all their vaccines, and the health department still has free COVID tests available to the public. Staffing updates. Polita Lucas began recently in the role of Senior Environmental Health Specialist in the Foods Division. Eric Goss has transferred into the role of Financial Manager. 2 new employees are scheduled to begin next Monday on June 26th. One filling the Community Health Specialist Tobacco Educator position, the other filling the role of Clinic Manager with the Futures Family Planning Clinic. We have been making ongoing updates to the Monroe County Health Department website. Jamie might be able to share some of those, providing more information about ongoing communicable disease, public health information, as well as updates with our food inspection reports are now updated and posted to the website monthly, and beginning to produce data that's tracking the metrics within our wastewater division to show the work productivity and how that's increasing.
Did you send out that your productivity, since you're talking about productivity, did you send out that little blurb, where you showed how many inspections and
Mhm.
actually come, did everybody get that?
Well,
Yeah.
and it's, that information is available, on the website as well. So we'll be updating that
Okay.
information, just to be able to see those continued improvements being made. Mhm.
Yeah, so if you look,
There's a nice response to one of our newspaper articles that says, stupid articles. Yes.
Right, so,
yeah, right here is where that table is.
so this is comparing May of 2021, May of 2022, and May of 2023. That type of pattern will continue, but as you see, compared to the 2 prior years, our total work productivity is at 111 compared to previously.
Did you want to show the food inspection?
And I'd also like to add, part of that increase in productivity is because of the people that are currently in those positions who were the previous employees and to some extent. So turnover is not always as negative as the newspaper would have you believe.
We've been getting a lot of really great comments about the new employees from contractors and from the public. So that's been really great. And that temporary position has been extremely beneficial this summer, getting in and helping out.
Good.
Mhm.
And your work, I'd like to throw in there. Because you're basically active in everything, it seems. All right. So are we gonna go ahead and that's it for your report? Does somebody have any other questions for Lori? When are you jumping in here?
I can jump in right now. I mean, the food division, we're winding down our first 6-month inspection for risk level 2s. I believe we have between the ballpark of between 20 and 25 more to go, and that ends at the end of June. We're also active in our summer feed program at the schools doing those inspections. Felita Lucas has joined the team and we're excited about having her. She's learning, shadowing, training, asking a lot of questions. And then also, we completed 2 rounds of farmer market inspections, and then we're prepping for the July fair coming up. Wastewater, we're doing permits, complaints, and a lot of campground inspections. I went out on 2 complaints today. So we did some dye testing and checked the septic field that was covered up. And then general environmental, they're doing pool inspections and we're gearing up for mosquito vector checks. So.
Excellent.
There was some concern about covering the hospitals and retirement home kitchens, which was an added job for foods. Has that posed any big problems or?
For hospitals and what was the one, schools?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, we're hitting at this time. No, I mean we're hitting our inspection numbers. I mean, we're there. Like I said, we're 20 to 25 off for this year for risk level 2s, and then risk level 3s are hospitals and whatnot, and our assisted livings. Like we're inspecting 3 times a year, but we're on pace to get those as well. There's not as many as the other ones, like our brick and mortars, our retail food establishments, but
Yeah,
we have a good pace right now.
there was some concern when the state sort of added those to
Yeah.
the menu of your work.
Yeah, I mean, those numbers haven't really changed on our end. We still have our set numbers, but we haven't increased.
Good, okay, glad to hear it.
Yeah, great. Well, it's good to hear that things are going well and that you're gotta get you. I know you're working hard.
Well, everybody's putting in the effort, so.
Yeah. Good.
Mike has been doing a great job and he's been out in the field every day, really helping and supporting the team and, bouncing around where it's needed. So it's been.
Yeah, you have an infectious personality, like, when you're out there, I want to do a good job for this guy.
Yeah.
I would say
Thank you.
infectious.
Well, yeah. All right, well, your enthusiasm is infectious.
Thank you. I like to keep it positive, so.
Yeah. All right, thanks. I wanted to get you in, so you can
Thank you.
stick around if you
I'll
want
hang
to,
out
but.
for a bit.
Or you can go whenever you feel like, so. You're dismissed. When you want. So no other, well, do we want to go ahead and talk about the grants? Or no, the package, we're gonna talk about PAC items next.
So PAC, so you just need to ratify. So these are the discussion that was on May 22nd. So ratifying that discussion and those decisions. So just to provide a quick brief overview, I guess, the proposed PAC additional positions for 2024 in preparation if the county does opt in, or an additional full-time employee for environmental health. That's currently the temporary, so moving that to a permanent position, adding an additional full-time for environmental. Again, to primarily continue helping with the wastewater and foods. Those are our two really heavy areas. An additional full-time for vital records. One consideration was due to the workload increases and with changes occurring requiring local health departments to issue records for other counties. One temporary full-time financial manager, which is, I believe, off the table at this point in time, and transitioning our school liaison position into a combined school liaison public health educator that would be a health department employee at the end of that grant cycle. PAC recommendations for WIS job review for the administrative tier, the administrative assistant, health administrator, and financial manager. There was a discussion on the health administrator proposal to 40 hours, which I believe we are tabling that at this point in time as
But
well.
let me interject here. We're not exactly tabling it, but what has to happen is that Lori's job has to go through, you guys know what WIS is, WIS.
Wagner, something.
Yeah, it refers to the consulting company that came in and did all the
Yes,
job
yes.
descriptions
Yeah.
for the county.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that until we had that session with the,
Yeah.
with the commissioners. But all jobs, when they're changing, when we're gonna change the job description, which we're going to do for Lori's job, in order to take it to a 40-hour position, has to go through the WIS process to see that it actually
justifies it.
yeah, so it has to do that first before we can then take it to the council and present it, so it has to do this process first.
So what does that entail? Does that entail bringing in somebody, basically an auditor who sees what the job is and how much work is getting done and how many hours are already way over the number allocated? I mean, what, do we have to wait for months for someone to come in to assess the situation? Does anybody have any idea what we have to do?
I can speak
Well, you just
somewhat.
had it.
With Dr. Britton met with some members of
Yeah.
council and the council attorney and the council administrator. It starts at that process, reviewing, making additions to the job description that aren't currently there, modifying that information to make sure that it's up to date and correct. So that is part of the review process to ensure positions are first classified appropriately as they should be according to the job duties. At that point in time, my understanding is the same consulting group would also take into consideration of is 35 hours enough time to meet these job requirements and fulfill those. I believe they can do a desk audit as well. I'm not not sure about those specifics. But that's kind of how the process starts. My last understanding is that Dr. Britton would be working with those same individuals with PAC in July for further discussion on presenting that for approval to the WIS.
And does that also apply to, I thought we were.
As well.
Changing, yeah,
Yes, so those
2 positions at least.
they're starting at the top and working their way down.
And is that also why we so-called tabled the notion of a part-time financial
Yes.
person as well?
Yes, the recommendation was with a new person in the role that the company would recommend giving that person 6 months. And then if,
Determine. Okay,
To try to determine whether the last person
was just not.
not up to the job, yeah,
Got it.
and before they prove another,
Sure,
and
that
I
makes
do
sense.
understand that, yeah. I mean, there's only so many dollars to go around. I'm assuming though that the new, and again, this is a sort of a question for the SB4 reviewers here. Enough funding is coming for these additional positions that we're proposing.
yes,
It sure seems that way. But
Yeah.
I think we could really afford to give raises across the board as well with some of the additional funding that the county opts in, which I think is well deserved.
Well, it's not only well deserved, it's probably just to keep us competitive. I mean, so people aren't leaving all the time because of salary
But
reasons.
but we'd also have to do it in terms of what those funds are having to cover.
Yes.
So it would be, you go back to juggling.
Mhm.
Do we get the funds from here or there and
Right.
another dance and maybe our new financial officer will be able to, is a good juggler, who knows?
But Senate Enrolled Bill 4 only gives a range at this point, right? So that we don't know exactly what's forthcoming
Mhm.
from that pile. of
Right.
money.
Right, so I mean, essentially, and again, these are just my thoughts going into it because I haven't got that far and that deep, is creating this budget based upon the minimum amount. And see what wiggle room you have with that, and then you can make adjustments from there. Depending on what the actual figure is, but I mean, I'm assuming it's gonna be hard to have that final number until the state as a whole knows who all's opting in.
Yeah.
Mm.
Because we know there's a big pile of money, but
Mhm.
if only 16 counties so far have opted in, they've got an awful lot of money to deal with.
There'll be a lot more counties. I
Yep,
think they're just
working on the budget
Working on it.
pieces.
So how many positions was that that we approved last time?
1, 2, 3, 5, but that includes
Financial.
The ones that we-
Yeah, so take, that's off the table. So we have 4 positions, and it was the environmental health person, and I'm sorry, what are the others?
So it would essentially be 2 for environmental health. We currently have 1, it's just still the
And then
temporary.
we had that chart.
Yes, sorry,
That's
vital records, and then school liaison / public health educator, which we have grant funding to cover that for part of 2024, but not all of 2024. So essentially it would transition into the health fund.
So does that particular change have to go through any other layer of bureaucracy?
PAC. It has to go through PAC,
Okay, but otherwise,
PAC and council.
okay, but these are not positions that were whisked. So we don't have to whisk them, is that right?
The only one that could go be deemed necessary for that would be if we are editing the school liaison, which does need edited because right now it's
That's what I was.
around
wondering.
COVID-19.
Yeah.
And the job description needs to be changed so that
Yeah.
it's more focused on long-term school support. And it also has additional public health education and outreach that it's going to start being a part of with some of those supporting job duties for the public health clinic.
So it may need to be whisked.
Yes.
Okay, so does that mean we can go ahead with it? Or do we have to wait until that process goes through?
Well, my understanding is you still need to ratify this because part of the PAC process, the WIS is part of the PAC process. So if you want to send it to PAC and PAC determines WIS, then
I think we need to vote that we are in favor of these additional employees so that that process can begin.
And do we then separately endorse the other part of it, those other three, or at least two places? At least the change in Jamie's and Lori's positions. Do we endorse that separately so that it will go through the WIS process?
Well, my guess is that,
It can't
yeah, we
hurt.
did vote, we did vote separately on those two issues last time.
But it wasn't a legitimate.
Well, yes,
vote, so-
yeah, no, that's
So
what I
we
mean.
should endorse
Yeah.
it tonight as well.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
that's what I need to know.
Yep, I believe so.
Sounds like that should be made into a package in order that it can be subjected to the,
Well, what I was hoping is we can
Bureaucracy.
approve these 4 positions,
Yeah, and then
go forward,
separately,
and then we'll do a separate one for the job,
those two.
for them to be whisked.
Okay, so I would move that we endorse the 4 new positions that have been proposed by our health administrator.
I'll second that motion.
Great. Any other discussion on this? All those in favor, please say aye.
I
Aye.
Opposed? All right, there you go.
I would further move that we endorse the changes to what would it be? Changes to your
Job
job
descriptions.
description for Lori and Jamie
and the financial manager.
and financial.
Well, so the discussion with Dr. Britton and the council was to start at the administrative tier, ensure that all those duties are being rearranged and that they're appropriate, and then we work our way down. So the because some of the financial managers, such as payroll and claims, have started to be done by our administrative assistant, which causes changes to the financial manager job description.
Oh, okay, so they're gonna change the financial manager's description, so that could be
As well,
included.
okay.
Yeah.
So, how about I move, I'll change my motion.
Yeah,
I withdraw that. I move that we endorse the changes to the administrative level proposed by our health administrator.
which would include the health administrator position, the
The assistant.
Administrative
and the
assistant,
financial.
Financial
manager.
All right, second, anybody have a second?
I'll second that one too.
All right, George, thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded for what she said. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, great, the motion passes. There you go, in an official meeting. So now
It's kosher.
go forth and whisk. All right,
We'll wish the best for you.
whisk the best, excellent.
No more acronyms for me.
All right, why don't we talk about the cooperative agreement grants funds?
Yes, workforce development, all the names.
The COAGs.
Yes, so. The discussion, as you saw the project proposals previously, so we are still having a discussion on the project proposals that were submitted from the schools.
Question that I asked Jamie earlier today is, do we actually endorse, agree to these? Or is that something done by the commissioners?
The commissioners want our recommendation. Yeah, they want, yes, they're the decision makers in this process, but they have requested, that's correct, right? They have requested our input on this.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Right. As I remember, Kay and I were making fun of some of them.
Well, it just seems so unrealistic for the amount of money that we have
There's a lot of-
available.
There's a lot of bleeding going on with the
Total
county.
revamping of HVACs and so forth. I
Exactly.
did have a question. Do all the schools have an AED available for them?
That is a great question. And I think that is something that we were looking into trying to supply and ensure that all the schools do. I know that from my understanding, there are schools that are in need of these or replacing them, updating them. I don't know what schools currently have them. I cannot give you that information today.
But yes, I had that very same question because I know that one school requests 4 of them
Right.
and
And one school
I
I
think that was
remember
St.
needed to update its water fountain for
Yeah, that was
students, just to
Montessori.
put.
And that makes
Yes,
sense.
and that makes that's
makes
something,
sense.
I mean, we're talking public health
Yeah,
and
and
clean
AEDs are
water,
important.
but some of them.
But our renewing, replacing their HVAC systems was like, wait a minute, that seems like an awful lot. My understanding of these funds is that it's supposed to be for planning for future events. And at least that's how I remember it being written. This is all about planning and obviating many of the difficulties we've had in the past. It's not about taking as much money as they can from the county to do the stuff they haven't been able to afford, or haven't chosen to put their money there. So I found some of this just appalling. I liked the idea that Montessori schools wants to refill water bottles. Great idea. No, we shouldn't have little kids putting their mouths all over water fountains. Too bad nobody else suggested doing anything like that in their proposals. I struggled with it. It was like if they asked me for better filtration on their air system, or, can you give us good filters? We'd like to spend this money on these filters for our system. It was like, okay, if you can get more stuff out of your system that way, great, but asking us to replace their HVAC systems, I just struggled with that. The playground equipment was an interesting proposal. I'm not sure how that fits into planning for our future. But on the other hand, the internal communication makes sense so that indeed it's reliable in case of emergencies. Okay, I get it. So I can agree to that. Edgewood, let's see, what did they want? Oh, they wanted the cleaning equipment so that they could, their battery ride on carpet extractors.
Yeah.
I was like, really? Okay, I mean, that's interesting. And those were reasonably expensive, but St. Charles, that was the St. Charles where the AEDs make great sense, and premium bleeding control and the trauma bags and more bleeding control. I was like, I still don't know what's going on at St. Charles. They have so much blood.
Bleeding control was mentioned somewhere in something.
St. Charles.
Well, no, it was
Another one, there
mentioned
was another
before.
one. Oh, I saw the one.
Like
I
in
think that was from
legislation or
Monroe County.
something, some of this, somewhere I saw bleeding control, and I think that's where that came from.
Well, St. Charles wanted 4 premium bleeding control kits and additionally 60 go kits with bleed control. I was like, 60, really? And large trauma bags. Okay.
Sounds like they're getting ready for shooting incidents.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's so scary that they're expecting shooters.
One go bag for each classroom.
Well, I mean, they wanted 4 AEDs. I mean, is St. Charles that large that they really need 4 AEDs?
Oh, they were the one.
Yeah. Well, there was one from Monroe, I thought from Monroe County Schools that asked for AEDs, and it was like, yeah, every
Yes.
school should have one. But 4 in one school?
They also said something about looking at all of their health offices
Yeah,
and doing an inventory or something like
and
that.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Make sure
that
you've
makes some
got,
sense.
But then the consultant fee.
That's
was
Monroe,
extremely-
that's Monroe County, that's
Yeah.
MCCS. Yeah.
$100,000 for a consultant.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was 60 and then there was
60.
something else.
They were using a half of the grant.
Mhm.
They, for what they, that was MCCSC. They wanted 60 something for one part and 60 something for consulting.
Project School wants to create this health, wellness, learning garden, creative play space, which again, it's lovely, but again, how is that planning for future outbreaks? I don't know. Nurse educator, this is the Monroe County. Deliverable. This is one from MCS. And the SB is the nurse educator and source resource and salaries for the health staff, nurse, health services staff and nurse educator, and the 60,000 for consultant fees. Goodness gracious. I don't see people actually addressing a whole lot of what we asked them to focus on these grants.
Last time, didn't we just take the money and divide it amongst the schools?
That is
I
correct.
recommend that, and they could use that into the best, whatever they felt the best use of it was.
Which means they're gonna go put it into their HVAC system and what? I just, it's kind of, maybe I'm wrong, but if you suggest in a grant proposal that this is what we're looking for, and people respond with things that are way out of line with what we've asked for, and that they're not really doing their due diligence in terms of complying with what we see as a need, which is let us plan for a next communicable outbreak. What needs to be in place? What is your school and this system doing to address a future need?
Well, the summary of the grant actually says this grant funding will continue to help provide resources for the local school responses to COVID-19 pandemic, other potential communicable disease outbreaks, promote public health, and improve the health and safety and well-being of Monroe County students as well as community at large. I mean, that's
It's
Very
pretty,
broad.
pretty vague. Yeah, pretty
Very
vague.
broad.
well, then you can spend it on whatever they want.
I mean, an argument could be made that,
Yeah,
kids-
but
kids can't function, in a hot classroom. I mean, that's going to be the argument. I would be more in favor of doing a similar thing that we did last time. Did we blanket? We didn't just send the same amount to regardless of the size, obviously.
It was divided based on school size.
Yeah.
So,
That makes
the
more
set,
sense.
a set amount of money and then dispersed based on population size.
Okay.
that RFP is very general, but it strikes me that things like major improvements in infrastructure are not really right
Well,
on the target.
yeah, the state did say that the money should not be used for infrastructure, operational purposes, items such as that. So basically no to the HVAC, carpet cleaner, consultant for auditing, that was not the intention of these funds, that other health departments that accepted these funds use the money to buy supplies and then be able to just provide that to the schools, such as AEDs, stop the bleed kits. Money for personnel should be used internally within the health department for relationship building and for long-term stability of a school position within the health department versus one position for one school corporation. So that was some of the
That makes
feedback.
much more sense to me.
So
And
the
not
school,
for salaries in the schools. I mean, things like consultants and school nurses, and
Right, but for salaries and personnel in the health department.
that's what I thought.
Mhm.
so if we disperse these funds, similar to the way we did last year, there should be some, in a sense, infrastructure things are specifically mentioned as something not to be used for. Then I think there has to be some agreement. These schools, they're not just gonna take this money and put it on infrastructure things.
Right, so. I don't know.
So
if
they're they're grant recipients, so don't they have to agree to the parameters of the grant and it's. Do they have to sign something? Do they have to,
One would think so.
yeah, you could think, yeah.
And fulfilling the terms of the grant deliverables, which we have some of the schools that have met all those, but we are still waiting for documentation on 5 of the schools for all of the grant deliverables to be met.
Yeah, there's, let's see. There's actually, it actually says here what the school has to do, to get these things.
Here's that's the MOU that was drafted by the school liaison, not the grant contract. So these,
Oh, yeah, I see.
so, so here's the actual grant contract.
Okay.
Which the grant contract does as outlined in the MOA deliverable 1. The grant contract does say that the health department has to employ a full-time school liaison, and each school that they are working with has to have a school liaison, or essentially a nurse, someone that's working with our school liaison. It is contained within the grant contract that the schools need to ensure that they're updating their communicable disease plans. And our school liaison is supposed to work with each school to ensure that those are updated, ensuring, for example, measles, they have a response plan for that. Deliverable 3 in the MOA was drafted by our school liaison. So it's not a requirement of the grant that the schools submit a project proposal. That was an item that the school liaison thought that should be asked, so that we had an idea of what the funds were going to be used on prior to dispersing the funds, rather than the other way around.
Right.
Okay. So they didn't, so technically they didn't have to provide.
A proposal, correct.
Oh,
But I believe we're the only county that's kind of given this direct funding to the schools. Some of the other counties provided small stipends, $1,000 or less, for individual projects, but not direct funds in this amount of money.
which makes much more sense. I think.
So what did they do with theirs? They kept it in
They've
the
kept it
department?
internally to use for personnel, creating an emergency fund, retaining funds to continue a position for longer. And for
Well, then we're talking about a whole different
Right.
discussion here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds like using, I mean, certainly the intention of the funds is for our preparedness. And so putting the funds towards that, since the schools by and large don't look like that's their focus, it makes as much sense as anything. It's,
When do we, how long do we have before we have to disperse this? I saw some reporting thing in September.
So the grant cycle ends June 30th of this year, and then the new grant cycle starts July 1st, but then there is a grace period after that point of when you are to submit all the final documentation and kind of close the grant out.
because to me, it seems like this is a discussion that the board should really have with the commissioners. That we should really talk about these co-ed funds and their dispersal rather than our doing this in completely different silos. It would have been nice beforehand, but even now, I don't feel good about most of the proposals that I'm reading. And it does not address what we believe these funds are supposed to be doing. And we know that we have people working on preparedness. And that's really it. We're post-COVID, but we are pre whatever's going to come next. And preparing for that is really the intention and the need with this funding.
This
In my
grant,
mind.
this grant goes away next year.
2024.
Yeah.
I would think the person that would have lots of input would be the school liaison. They should be visiting those schools and they should know what the needs are.
We don't
As
currently
far
have-
as-
We currently don't have one.
No,
Yeah.
I know, that's the problem that I see. And I do feel every school needs an AED.
Yep.
An AED, there are probably multiple things that they need. They probably don't need 60 go bags, but and 4 trauma bags, whatever those are.
Yeah, I think that it could be beneficial to use these funds again to provide some of those supplies, perhaps offer CPR training courses to individuals within the schools. Perhaps help to assist with the health fair if there are children who need dental screening to get up to date with vision screening, to be able to help fund and support those types of clinics. And to be able to do more of those integrated activities and services and supplies.
Some of that funding's definitely part of SB4. So we're going to have, should we opt in, and likely will be, we're going to be getting some money to help us do a lot of that, I believe, at least in my reading of SB4. And yeah, maybe once we can get through the pack that we sent forth, and we can find out that we can indeed have a school liaison as part of a position, we can start working on this. But in the meantime, I certainly would recommend to the commissioners that we, at this point, put these funds towards our preparedness rather than, and I agree, every school should have an AED, no doubt about it. But the rest of it, it's just, it seems ridiculous. And I don't know that we should be handing large amounts of money to the schools to do with whatever they choose to. And that's really, certainly looks like what they think. They're gonna get a big chunk of this money and they're gonna put it wherever they choose.
Yeah, I think probably in a little bit in their defense, I'm not sure we really had this kind of discussion last year.
No, we didn't.
And so they had maybe a different expectation because of maybe we needed to have this conversation last year and didn't. So let me just review here. How much time do we have left to make this decision?
I can clarify that with the state. From my understanding, once we've met all deliverables, we can retain these funds, which would give us a grace period. However, I do still have some of the schools who have not submitted their communicable disease plans, which is part of our grant deliverable. So we need to make sure we have that by June 30th.
What do you, when you refer to deliverables, exactly what does that mean?
So terms of the grant that have to be met to comply with the grant.
Okay. Just not familiar with that.
Was there a deadline given them for that?
Yes.
So can you withhold funds from the funds or do they already have the funds?
No, I have not dispersed any funds until the terms have been met of a grant.
At least one of the schools refused to comply with the mask mandate. So I would think that their communicable disease planning is a little off base.
But they did not receive funding last year.
Yep, and they certainly shouldn't be even considered this year.
Well, it seems to me that that very vague request for proposal is kind of shot us in the foot.
Yeah.
I mean, the first part clearly highlights the need for preparedness against future infectious disease outbreaks of the COVID kind. And then the latter part sounds like it could be anything. So I don't know
I think.
what we should say.
I think it's challenging because in my opinion, it's very subjective. I mean, right here, it says the intent of this funding is to provide funding to local public health to sustain and support local public health COVID-19 response efforts with a focus on schools.
Right.
That leaves a lot up to interpretation. Now that I've had further conversations with the state to get more specifics, it's been helpful, but it would have been helpful to have more specific information before.
Right. Okay.
So it sounds like schools will be disappointed because they're not going to get the windfall that they anticipated. And it really, from what I read in these proposals, there were many times when it looked like, well, this is going to be my chunk of the $240,000, and they just assumed that they were going to get one part of that. And
Yeah, what we need is I think right now is we need an assessment from you for the department. What if retaining, I mean, I don't want to sound vindictive towards any schools for their past performance or anything like that, because, you know, I feel like they probably they didn't receive their funding last year. So, and I don't want to create ill will because it's, you know, but I think we need a good assessment of what the department needs for preparedness, because obviously some of this money is meant to be retained in a department. You're being very gracious by not lobbying for that, but because I think you probably inside, if I would guess what you're thinking is, you're thinking that some of this money could be used by the department.
Yeah, we could have, afforded to have a position within the department for 4+ years with this funding.
Yeah.
And instead we have to worry about losing a position in 2024 and not having it at all.
it also sounds as if one of those positions certainly would be helping us to assess what do we need to do in terms of
Right.
our schools and helping prepare them as well as the rest of the county for future outbreaks and educating the personnel in those schools as to how to manage outbreaks. Because clearly nobody was ready for what COVID meant in this community. And it won't look like COVID next time. It'll look like something else, but they at least need awareness. And that's not easy to give people. And we need to also be helping them set up a system of direct communication to the health department when they even suspect something within their schools. So from my very limited vantage point, it sure seems like most of this money should be in the department in terms of preparation, rather than sending it out to the schools to do probably very little with in terms of preparation.
I think one of the challenge too is kind of that mixed messaging.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I agree.
particularly from,
Yeah.
Just the transition and, making a different decision.
Well, and part of it is, as that says, it's COVID, and it's like, okay, we're mostly post-COVID and anticipating future. It was put in a way that is unfortunate, and it will probably take a really good PR person to spin this so that the schools don't feel cheated out of these monies. And it needs to be expressed, and I guess I would turn to the commissioners, since they are the spokespeople, to find a way of expressing it that says, we appreciate your proposals, and
All right.
we've determined.
I'm gonna, just because of the sake of time, it's already 10 after 7. And we still have several other items here. So what's the feeling of the rest of Kay and George? My feeling is that we should ask for something from you. We're asking things of you all the time, but this is money. So something that I'm not saying that we don't want to give some of this money to the schools, but I'm also saying that we should do a serious assessment of what we need in the department for this kind of preparedness, school liaison positions open, that type of thing. So, if you could do that fairly quickly, then I think maybe we can have a discussion with the commissioners about this really quickly and still get our timeline in order. And then decide what we're going to do. And you're right, since we didn't do this way last year, it will probably not go down easily. But nevertheless, if we have proper justification for this, then, and this is an open meeting, so anyone can be listening. So if we have the proper justification, then at least we can show, what we did with it.
I think that makes good sense, Steve.
On my list.
Okay, great. So does anybody have any objection to moving on to renewal of the grant discussion here?
Let's go for it.
All right. Lori, once again. you are-
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to ensure that the Board of Health is staying up to date with all of our ongoing annual grant renewals, this is more of just an informational piece here. So our vaccines for children, which helps to support our public health clinic, that is renewing for a term in July 1st. Our public health emergency preparedness funding, which helps to provide funding for a part-time assistant and emergency supplies, services. And then the school liaison COAG workforce development grant, as we've discussed, is also renewing July 1st. So those are all the ongoing renewals that we have. Moving forward with grant documents, we'll be presenting those to the Board of Health first for review and approval before moving on to approval with the commissioners, just to ensure, again, that communication and transparency with all of our documents moving forward.
So we probably need to, it never hurts to have a vote. So do we have a motion to approve the renewal of the grant, continue the process for the renewal?
I would so move.
Second,
Well, second.
okay. Thank you. Any further discussion about the renewal of these grants as Lori just outlined? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Lori, once again. Under new business, actually, Dawn Aurora asked me, and Lori, recently, what the situation was with the Health Net funding, which we have given them. We used to give volunteers in medicine even more money, if you recall. We think it was like 15 to 28,000. I think maybe that's at its height. And we reduced that over time as they got some other funding. But of course, now Volunteers in Medicine is no longer in existence. It's now Health Net. And Health Net is an organization that does have lots of funding. So Aurora was saying, well, what about, basically any low income person, mother who is pregnant, basically is eligible for Medicaid. Why are we still giving them money?
Well, originally it was for the Latino mothers who could not get any other type of
That's
funding.
exactly what I wrote back to her, and in response was, this is for the undocumented, who I said, and so to confirm that, since I used to volunteer, I volunteered for 5 years at Volunteer in Medicine, did dentistry there. I called Shelley Salee, who is currently, runs the clinic basically. And I had about an hour-long discussion with her about how vital they view this $10,000 that we give them. She said when she got the call from me, she thought we were going to cut their funding off, and she lost sleep. I mean, this is how important it is the night before. I said, no, I don't think that's going to happen, because I just wanted to confirm that my recollection was true, and that is in fact exactly what they use it for. And they need much more money than the $10,000 there. But they're actually, I think they were formerly using Dr. Laban. I think they are no longer using Dr. Laban.
When they became Health Net, they no longer used.
Yeah. And so this 10,000, my recommendation after my conversation with her would be to continue our the grant or the funding of OB care there, which is what we're doing basically.
We need a motion and endorsement of that.
It's probably not going to hurt.
I would endorse our continued funding, Health Net funding for the obstetrical care of the needy women in the community.
I'll second.
Second that. Okay, thanks, Kay. All right, it's been moved and seconded to continue the Health Net funding. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and okay, you want to talk about this?
Briefly. So there has been a discussion recently with IU Health about contracting the school liaison duties through community health, similarly to how we contract our public health nursing services. So this was a discussion of for the 1-year grant term. I expressed my long-term interest in plans and having this be a long-term sustainable position within the health department that is spending some of its time helping to support the public health clinic. Could be a nurse, an LPN, MA, be able to participate in the vaccine clinics, help provide, some extra services to them, but also be retained within the health department, coordinating, outreach and education programs.
But now the IU, if I recall correctly, our conversation, IU Health had in recent times cut back some of their funding or their support for this position. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, to my understanding.
Yeah, and so public health. You talked the public health clinic, right, about this?
Correct.
Yeah, and they felt that they needed support somewhere in the range of $70,000, which I thought sounded maybe high, but at least we needed some information about the justification for that. I assume that that's more than just actually, the person that does this, aren't they required to have some credentials?
They're supposed to either have a master's in public health, or they should be a paramedic, EMT,
Yeah.
Nurse.
So then once I thought about that, and you see the justification for at least more money, but is IU Health no longer providing any support for that position?
I have not received that information at this time.
Because my proposal was to share funding rather than us supporting the whole thing. Seeing if we could work out a deal where we share some funding for this position, which would allow the position to be, I assume it's a full-time position. Yeah.
Didn't you say the state preferred that the school liaison come from the health department?
That is correct. So the state's opinion with this grant is that this is actually a health department employee following Monroe County government policies, procedures, everything that a Monroe County employee would.
Because my problem with sharing that position would be who has oversight of this individual.
Well, yeah, so we knew that that's what the requirement was at this point, but if we were not able to secure the person that we needed for the money that we had, my proposal was to see if we could contract, if it would be, we were going to look into whether we could contract this job, this person, not just, so they wouldn't actually be employee, I guess, they would be a contractor. But
We should be able to.
The health department will be in charge if they hired the contractor.
Well, I think that's where the state is saying that would have to be clearly defined and outlined. Who has ownership and oversight of the program and the contract, because the contract, although they're a contractor, should be considered a Monroe County employee.
And it sounds almost like IU Health wants to be the middleman in this contracting policy and take something off the top because who knows?
you would think they might want to take money off of something. IU Health. I'm being
Facetious.
Yes.
Yes. So
what
until we get more information from IU Health, I don't think we should even.
what do we need to do?
I don't think we should discuss it.
Yeah, well, and then I would like to know the assessment of how much were we paying this person before when we had school liaison?
So the starting salary, I believe it's like 46,000.
So why did they say we need 70?
70. Well, that's their percentage.
I am waiting for that clarification.
Well, this information actually came from from the public health
Mhm.
assessment.
Yeah,
Finding.
yes, well, so the feedback was if they could receive $70,000 for these services with an agreement that would.
I think we need the information from IU Health that you asked for. And I don't think it makes sense for us to even consider it until we've got all the information.
True. Yeah, I mean, this was just, I was just throwing some ideas out. So we could get because it's, we have to have a school liaison person to do these things. I mean, we have to have one. I think it's in the grant, right?
That is correct. So that is a requirement. So we have the employee who was here previously in that position, who transitioned into an assistant role in emergency preparedness. Emergency preparedness has been assisting with this position and could essentially fulfill those duties if needed during this transition period. Because it's not a requirement that everyone who accepts this grant has to have a full time, but you just have to have someone in that role to provide those services.
So we are complying.
We are still fulfilling those duties and services, just not in a full-time employee.
And should we have this conversation, then we can certainly, but then of course it has to get released, I'm sure, but we would then look at, should we decide we need a full-time person in this position, it could be posted.
It is posted currently.
Okay,
So I think this is just my personal opinion only. I think that the position would have to be posted as it is now, filled as it is now, and then go through the process of having the job description reviewed and changed to fit the long-term goals of what we need.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we could be waiting a very long time to not have anybody in the position.
is this something that should also be whisked at this point, or do we whisk when we get there?
Oh, well, it was on the wish list.
Excellent.
Okay. Any other discussion on this school liaison? You feel like you have enough guidance at this point?
Yes, I think so. I think any more of that information would be helpful.
All right, board member positions, as you know, I was vice president, which I guess I technically still am, because we never voted, but and Aurora needs to, she volunteered, and we asked her actually if she would be willing to accept that nomination, and she was. So we need to make this official by doing maybe a little vote here.
So I move that that Steve becomes our chair and Laura becomes our vice chair.
Here.
I guess that's a second and a third.
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
I'm
Opposed? All right, now. So these are obviously temporary at this point because we have official elections that are usually
In January.
beginning of January. Right? So we will be going through this again at that time. Okay.
Thank you for fulfilling that.
Yes.
Absolutely, and I think we ought to thank Dr. Kalukian for all her years of service.
Yes, you are
Right.
very correct. 27 years. She's did this job and did it well. So, yes, my thanks. It was fun getting to know Carol too on a one-to-one basis because she is a unique person,
She's
Is there anything
but
else?
very competent. All right, I hear a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Aye. All right, thank you all.
Thank you
Appreciate
all.
it.